Hello everyone! In this video we'll find out if it's possible to beat The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt at level 1. The way the challenge will work is that I will only be allowed to use the gear you have at the very beginning of the game when Geralt wakes up from his nightmare at White Orchard. This means that I will only be able to use the beginning Witcher armor and swords, the Thunderbolt and Tony Owl potions since they are there in your inventory, you just have to equip them. And that's pretty much it, since you literally have nothing else. This means that I am not allowed to pick up or craft new weapons, brew potions, decoctions or weapon oils, or make any skill upgrades. That being said, I am allowed to pick up food and drinks because they are a little bit of a healing factor that I will be able to use during fights, so I am not killed in 2 hits from literally every enemy I face. Another thing is that I cannot stop Geralt from gaining XP and leveling up his character. However, if I do not use new gear or make any use of the upgrade points, that pretty much amounts to nothing, as the only power upgrade he has is a very little damage upgrade for every level he gains, which is not that big of a deal, especially as you continue throughout the game. Another thing to mention is that I will be playing on the Death March difficulty and will not be allowed to change it for any reason, no matter how difficult the challenge will get. That's all for the rules, so let's jump into the challenge. Our story begins like every other time near White Orchard with Geralt and Vesemir discussing stuffed unicorns. While they do that, they are ambushed by a few ghouls, but considering that this is the very beginning of the game, they are pretty easy to deal with. The rest of White Orchard is pretty self-explanatory. I beat up a few Temerians, met up with the hunter Mislav, and learned more about the Griffin. Speaking of which, right before we fight with the Griffin, Vesemir hands you a crossbow, which I am not allowed to use, so great, I guess I'll sell it for like 20 crowns. Thanks, Vesemir. Not having the crossbow wasn't that big of a hit considering that unless you're underwater it's not doing much damage anyway, but it was a bit annoying to have to wait for the Griffin to land every single time. Despite that, we vanquished the beast and I delivered its head to the Nilfgaardians, who gave me information about Yennefer's whereabouts. Unfortunately, right before we could head for Vizima, Vesemir got into a bar brawl, so naturally I had to intervene and kill every single one of the peasants. This somehow led to me meeting up with Yennefer a few hours before I intended to do so. If that's how I achieve my goals quicker, I will start bar brawls every single night. Hell, I even got rewarded for it by getting washed by a few beautiful ladies. In Vizima, the Emperor also gave me the mission to find his daughter Cirilla. I told him that would cost him a lot of money, otherwise I wasn't bringing her there. He agreed and we shook our hands to solidify the deal. This led me to Velen, where I had a very nice drink with a few very lovely gentlemen, and then I had to go to the village of Heatherton to find Hendrik. Unfortunately, he already got eaten by a few wild dogs, so he was pretty useless. Thanks to Hendrik's incompetence, I was stuck reading his diary. Most of the entries were quite funny. They were all telling stories about how he was getting rejected by every woman in the village, but he also managed to lead me to the Bloody Baron, who told me a part of Ciri's story, and considering that Geralt started to feel very underpowered even in Velen, playing with Ciri was hilariously easy because she's quite overpowered throughout the game and you don't even have to worry about upgrading her. I then had to find Princess the Goat, and this led me to a fight against a bear, and even though Geralt was getting quicker by the minute compared to his enemies, he was still relatively strong, so I dealt with the bear easily and got the goat back to the Pellar, for better or for worse. Back to Crow's Perch I went and beat some sense into the Baron's head. And for once I was able to actually complete the Lubrekin ritual instead of having to kill the botchling, so that was very nice. The raids weren't too difficult to deal with and were definitely the better option than having to fight the botchling. I learned more about the Baron's wife and daughter, and then headed out to wander in the dark with Keira. This led me to the boss fight with the golem, where for the first time I felt like I brought a stick to a sword fight. Thankfully Keira was there, so I didn't have to fight the golem for a long time, but still it wasn't good considering what was to come. For now at least I was safe considering the hounds of the Wild Hunt were pretty weak, so even though Keira was not helping me with them, I was able to deal with them easily. Keira then had the audacity to try to seduce me by falling into my arms. She failed miserably and seemed pretty mad about it. However, there was no time to be mad as we had to fight with Nitral next. The hounds of the Wild Hunt were again pretty easy to deal with, despite Keira not helping with them, and the boss himself wasn't that difficult considering that at least for him Keira decides to help you. We explored the rest of the elf's laboratory and then I headed to Crockback Bog, where I had plenty of drowner interactions, mostly thanks to Johnny, and those drowners were pretty tough. Even though we're still in Velen, enemies were getting strong. I met with the crones, destroyed the evil spirit, and learned that the Baron's wife was actually Gran the whole time. I told the Baron instantly and he told me the rest of Ciri's story, where I had to face the Basilisk, which was very easy considering that Ciri was constantly getting stronger. And with that we were done with Velen and I had to go to Novigrad, where I needed to find Triss in order to have any chance of finding any information about Ciri. I had to go for a swim in the dirty water in order to help Triss, and then kill a few mage hunters, which took a while because the steel sword is useless. I'm pretty sure the prop sword you use in order to fight with Dandelion in that side quest is stronger than my steel sword at this point. That being said, after meeting with Zoltan, I had a few errands that were combatless, so there was nothing to worry about. The only thing I had to do was meet up with Dandelion's ex-girlfriends, which seemed pretty easy at the time. I even traumatized a few children by interrupting their lesson. Unfortunately, then I had to face Rosavar Artre in a sword fight, where the wooden sword I had to use instead of my steel sword was nearly as strong as the blade I was using to fight with humans. So basically there was no need to change my sword. I wouldn't have done much more damage to Rosa regardless. I went to see Priscilla's performance, got blamed for a few murders that I definitely committed. Despite that, nobody really cared, so I could just go on my merry way and meet up with Dijkstra and his friends. This leads you to a part where you're stripped of all your weapons and gear and you have to use a weapon provided to you by Dijkstra, but instead I decided to just lurk around and use Igni on the enemies instead of fighting them. After that I had to go into Dijkstra's sewers, where I fought with a bunch of drowners. This led Triss and I to the witch hunter's hideout, where I found Caleb Menge. The plan was to find a way to release Dandelion. Unfortunately, Menge and I didn't see eye to eye and I had to fight with him. To my surprise, Menge was pretty easy to deal with. It was the rest of the witch hunters that proved difficult, and I am not proud to say how long it took me to kill all of them, but in the end I did kill every single one of them, and not just the men, but the women and children too. Next on my hit list was Cyprian Wiley. As always, I decided to just go to the arena pretending to be a gladiator. I had to fight a few enemies, but that wasn't a big deal. Even the Andregas weren't that difficult to deal with, and Boris the Bear was quite easy in fact. The only tricky part was having to fight Igor and his crew, but I managed to survive that as well. I met up with Roach, who led me to Radovid, who led me to Junior. And we had a very pleasant chat with the guy, and I definitely didn't beat the crap out of him during the chat. He told me more about what a badass Ciri had become, and in the end I decided to kill him because he was a waste of space. Lastly, before finding Dandelion, I had to set up a whole play in order to find Dudu. This proved to be very easy, and I finally found the witch hunter holding Dandelion hostage, and that guy should have been a whole boss fight on his own. He was probably tougher than Eredin. I don't know why he was so strong, but he was blocking every single shot I made, and whenever I managed to land a hit, I was barely doing any damage at all. After a very long battle, I finally managed to save Dandelion, and Zoltan and Priscilla had the audacity to just casually stroll there like they did something. I then had to go to Skellige, but first Roach needed some help to keep Vess alive. Honestly, she should have died a few times, but for some reason after a while the Nilfgaardians were not doing damage to her anymore, which kept her alive long enough for me to manage to kill every single one of the Nilfgaardians. I then went on a boat to Skellige in order to rejoin Yennefer in our search for Ciri. We were attacked by pirates, however, with the help of Captain Wolverstone I was able to defeat all of them. Going to Ermian's laboratory was very easy because all enemies you face are hallucinations, after which you have to fight an earth elemental, but with Yennefer's help that is also very easy to defeat. We acquired the Mask of Cerberus and had to look into the past. At times we were attacked by a few foglets, but they weren't a big issue. To Ermian's dismay, we ruined the mask. However, our defense was that we were doing it for Ciri. He wasn't very happy about that, but in the end accepted our reasoning, and Yennefer and I headed out for Freya's garden, where I had a run-in with Morkvark. I was very curious if I will be able to defeat him, considering that I wasn't doing much damage and he was constantly healing. But in the end, my damage was just a bit more than the healing factor, so I managed to defeat Morkvark and force him to eat his own flesh. I found Craven's body, and Yennefer used some necromancy in order to revive him so he can tell us his part of Ciri's story. He told us how he and Ciri managed to escape from the wild hunt, and I was done with Skellige and had to find Uma. I took him to Kaer Morhen as he was clearly cursed and I needed the rest of the Witcher's help in order to lift that curse, so me and Lambert set off to find the Circle of Elements, where we encountered a bunch of drowners which were pretty tough. At this point even the smallest enemies were taking a while to defeat. To make things even better, Old Speartip was just camping and waiting for us awake. I couldn't burn him, I couldn't do any damage to him that way, so I just had to jump in and accept the fight. That was unfair. At least give me a chance to fail the minigame where he is sleeping. Anyway, Old Speartip wasn't that difficult because Lambert was acting like a distraction, so I was able to damage him without any issues. Next I met up with Eskel and we went to hunt a Forktail. That was probably even easier than killing Old Speartip, because for some reason the Forktail wasn't attacking at all, just occasionally turning around and trying to hit us with his tail, but that was pretty much it. Finally, I helped Yennefer fix her megascope and we had the night off, and me and the boys got drunk and did some questionable things. I'm not sure how we ended up in that situation. We lifted the curse by turning Uma into a witcher. It turned out that it was an elven sage named Avalach, and he told me that he hid Ciri on the Isle of Mists, so I had to go there and deal with all of the monsters. The biggest monsters of the bunch were the dwarves that just abandoned their three friends and were like, "Oh yeah, you the random stranger, you go get them. Why the hell were they out in the first place? This place is crawling with monsters." Anyway, I found one of their friends and didn't bother to check for the other two, and I just lied to them saying that they died. They believed me because they were gullible fools. That's what they get for trusting strangers. Ciri and I got to Kaer Morhen, and Vesemir was very excited to tell me how everyone I asked for help actually arrived. Yeah, I asked like 3 people. I asked Ermion, who felt he owed it to Ciri because she was his ward as well. I asked Crouch because I saved his girlfriend, and I asked Zoltan because he's a cool guy. That's pretty much it, Vesemir. I didn't ask that many people because nobody likes me. The Battle of Kaer Morhen was tough. I even had to use Dimeritium bombs because nobody else would use them to close the damn portals. Or at least it was tough while I was playing as Geralt. With Ciri it was a walk in the park, but Geralt was struggling. I even had to be saved by Lambert. Had he not been there, I would have definitely died by the hand of Triss, oddly enough. That would have been funny. Anyway, when the time came to return the favor to Lambert, I couldn't do it because I was too weak. The guy was losing health so fast, and I was dealing like 70 damage to the Wild Hunt. It was ridiculous. I had no chance of saving him. Maybe I shouldn't have been lazy and skipped Keira's quests, but why should I be forced to do that stupid quest with the stupid tower, and why can't Wamber just fight properly with the Wild Hunt soldiers? They're only like 5. I'm dealing with them pretty easily. It's just taking me 2 hours to kill them. Lambert was killed and the battle continued as normally. In the end, Vesemir sacrificed himself, causing Ciri to go into a meltdown that managed to drive the hunt away, as otherwise they would have all died. At the funeral, I apologized to Lambert for being too weak and paid my respects to both him and Vesemir, vowing to get revenge. Ciri also had revenge in mind, so she woke me up in the middle of the night in order to go to Bald Mountain and kill Imlerith. Before that, I wanted to sell her out to the Emperor, so I convinced her to go to Vizima first instead. Everything was going great until I was presented with my reward, a very small box with coins. That wasn't even full. Are you serious? That's what I get for finding your daughter who can literally teleport between time and space? You can't even fill the damn box? Screw you, we're leaving. We arrived at Boat Mountain and everything seemed well. The Sylvan wasn't too difficult because Ciri was there to kill him. She then had to deal with the crones, and again, overpowered Ciri makes things easy. Unfortunately, then I had to fight with Imlerith. And that was painful. The reason for that is that he has a mountain of a health bar. He hits like a tank and I hit like a pebble. The first phase of the fight isn't too bad. He does block a lot of your attacks if you're not precise enough, and if you're not careful he will hit you, but other than that his movements are relatively slow, so you don't have to worry too much about him. The only thing you have to worry about is that you need to take a long time in order to take down his health bar enough for the second phase. And that's where the real trouble begins, because the guy starts teleporting all over the place, his attacks are much faster, and he's frozen himself, meaning that your attacks make even less damage than before. Yeah, sure, after you dodge a few swings he is very easy to hit, but it takes a very long time to defeat him in that phase. Your attacks are so nerfed that this is probably even slower than the original phase where you take 2/3 of his health. Considering that he punishes every single mistake you make, it was a very difficult fight to complete, and the worst part was that even if you die, you then have to deal with phase 1, which I was managing to beat every single time, but I was wasting 10 minutes of my life every time in order to just get to the second phase, where he would just kill me because I would dodge 1 second too late. After several attempts, I finally managed to defeat Imlerith, and I had never been more satisfied by the sight of his face getting squashed. After our victory, I had to gather the Lodge of Sorceresses. First I went after Philippa Alcard, and she was very polite to send a Fire Elemental against me. The Fire Elemental was very easy to deal with, considering that Philippa constantly shot it with friendly fire, and Philippa herself was pretty easy to deal with. After that I walked around the city with Ciri for a while, and then met up with Yennefer in order to break out Margarita from prison. Now this was tough, because at this point even the most basic drowners were taking a lot of hits in order to be killed, and what made it difficult was the fact that they only needed to hit me twice in order to kill me. That being said, the drowners were complete losers when compared to the ghouls and the witch hunters. I only dealt with the ghouls because there was a rot fiend around them, otherwise with their healing it was pretty much impossible to kill them. As for the witch hunters, I'm pretty sure I hit one 100 times until I killed him. I then had to acquire the key to the cells from the warden. Thankfully for some reason the witch hunters didn't want to enter this one room, and so I was able to just shoot them with fire until they all died, and that was very convenient because it honestly saved me half an hour of pain. I killed all of the hunters, got the keys, and summoned Yennefer, who took care of Margarita. Finally, I had to deal with Avalar, and this was honestly the easiest part of the final preparations quest, because all I had to do was just climb on the portal and watch as Avalar fought with the monsters. In the other worlds you don't face any enemies that you cannot avoid, and then we find Gale and convinced him to betray Eredin. Finally, before we could fight with the Wild Hunt, we had to find the Sunstone. To do that, I asked a few Pearl Divers where I could find it. They were very helpful. Unfortunately for them, they were then attacked by a few drowners, but the way I see it, I just got a free boat to get out of there. Before getting the Sunstone, Yennefer made me go see Avalar's laboratory. Unfortunately, it was guarded by a golem that was so powerful that my sword felt like a toothpick against it. Because of that, Ciri and I destroyed his laboratory, because how dare he have a powerful defender How dare he protect his own stuff? In order to acquire the Sunstone, I recruited Philippa Eilhart to help me, and with her it was a walk in the park to get the Sunstone, no matter how many golems I had to face to get to it. We summoned the Wild Hunt and it was time for the final battle. At first I was playing as Ciri, which was extremely easy because she was even more overpowered than before. I killed every single enemy I had to face, and then fought with Karantir for a bit. This is where the fun ended because after absolutely destroying him as Ciri, I then had to finish the fight using Geralt. And you would think that it would be easy to kill a guy who's currently bleeding out and can barely move. And you would be right in a normal playthrough, but in this one Geralt was doing no damage to the guy. I'm pretty sure his health bar was going down because he was actually bleeding out and not because I was doing any damage to him. At least his attacks were also extremely easy to dodge, and if I wasn't feeling like dodging the attack, there was an ice elemental I could use as a shield. In the end, the fight took a very long time. And I mean a very long time. The battlefield was entirely filled with the corpses of the ice elementals. I don't even know how the guy summoned that many. After what felt like an eternity, I finally managed to defeat Karantir and killed him. Which means that we only have Eredin to deal with now. And as always, he is the most disappointing fight in the whole game. Barely an inconvenience. He's not doing much damage to you despite the fact that you're literally using a level 1 armor. He's extremely easy to dodge and he's extremely easy to hit. And he has nowhere near as much health as Karantir and Imlerith had, for example, considering the fact that it was extremely quick to beat him. To be fair, the fact that he was constantly shooting himself with asteroids didn't help, but still. I defeated Eredin once and for all, and as a reward I received a sword, which led to a very hilarious moment where I equipped that sword for like a second and my damage jumped by like 500 instantly. And this is what I meant at the start of the video when I said that the damage increase from leveling up is irrelevant as long as you're not upgrading your gear or using skill upgrades, because leveling up to level 24 only increased my damage by like 100, while just a new sword increased it by 500. Anyway, in order to finish the game, I had to meet up with Ciri and Tavalar. She told me that it was her destiny to destroy the White Frost and save the world. She told me that she will be back very soon, however she never returned. The world was saved, but Ciri had sacrificed herself in order to save it. Unsurprisingly, the Emperor wasn't very happy about his daughter dying, so he told me that he never wanted to see me again. Honestly, the feeling was mutual, so I had no problem with that. In the end, I returned to White Orchard, where this adventure began, and crafted myself a new blade dedicated to Ciri, dedicated to her memory. And with that, we have successfully completed the challenge and beaten The Witcher 3 at level 1. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future videos, and feel free to check out any of my other gaming challenges as they are great fun as well. That's all for the video, thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye!